What's up, everyone? We're back. Season 2 of Chasing Rings, baby, officially underway. What's up, fellas?
Hey,
Hey,
what's going on?
what's going on?
Not much, not much. Ready to get back into this. If you are new to our show, we are a football-focused show, but we do, and that's college and professional, but we do discuss the major happenings in the larger sports ecosystem. And again, for our consistent viewers and listeners, welcome back. Thanks for continuing to rock with us. Tonight, we're diving into a topic that continues to evolve, the NIL landscape in college sports. It's reshaping recruiting, rosters, and how college athletes build their futures. We will chat with NIL strategist Ashley Smith from AGSports to break it all down for us in a bit. But first, you know how we do.
Wait, what?
Big dude, what do you have for us on the season premiere?
Well, Texas Tech has been a discussion all summer about Brendan Sorsby and whether he would play or not. But did you know for this past, and we thought he was going to the draft, but did you know that this past draft in 2026, Texas Tech had a high of 9 people that came off of their team this particular year in the 2026 draft?
Wait, what?
That's pretty good for a program that's not typically at the top. That's what's up. What do you have for us, G?
Okay, I didn't know this. Some of y'all Big 12 fans may know this, but Big 12 is the only P4 conference with a formal NFL partnership. And they work on technology, on international initiatives, improving officiating, analytics. So it's a really, really big, significant deal between the Big 12 and NFL. I never knew that.
Wow, didn't know.
Wait, what?
Yo, that's crazy. All right. All right. My wait, what is actually a World Cup, John? Did you know that New Zealand holds one of the most unique statistical anomalies in World Cup history? They are the only team, and this happened in 2010, the only team in the tournament to finish undefeated despite being eliminated in the group stage.
Wait, what?
How's that possible?
So they had a bunch of ties. They had 2 1-1 ties with Slovakia and Italy. And at the time, Italy was the defending champions. And they had a 0-0 tie with Paraguay. So they basically went back home undefeated, eliminated in the group stage.
Oh, good God.
All right. So that concludes our.
Wait, what?
All right. Next, let's get into some around the ring in sports news. So Tuesday was a big day in college football. It was the first day of the Big 12 College Football Media Day, highlighted by questions, of course, about our friend Brendan Sorsby and that whole controversy. They talked about corporate expansion, of course, Q&A with Coach Prime from Colorado, and they talked about playoff expansion. The last day takes place on Wednesday, but we will recap all of the happenings and the biggest takeaways for you on our Thursday episode. Next in news, we are down to the final 8 in World Cup action. Of course, the most noteworthy game in this part of the world was Monday's Belgium-U.S. game, which was dominated by Belgium in a 4-1 victory. But unfortunately, it was highlighted by some really untimely mistakes by the U.S. that ultimately cost them the game. The goalkeeper, I feel for him, but just terrible decisions. But overall, kudos to the American team for bringing some renewed energy around soccer in this country. And of course, we had an absolute classic between Argentina and Egypt on Tuesday. I wasn't able to actually see it, but I was listening to it in my travels. Argentina made a great escape, I would like to call it. They were trailing Egypt fellas 2-0 with 11 minutes left. And then our guy, Lionel Messi, showed the world why he's the GOAT, leading Argentina to a 3-2 victory. And that included an assist and a goal by him. Interestingly enough, Messi missed a penalty kick, and that was his second missed of the tournament, and he is the World Cup leader in missed penalty kicks, not counting extra time. But what I love about this, after the game, I heard this really good quote, and actually it's a great quote. The person said you could see Messi start to hunt, and when he does that, no one can stop him. And I just had chills when I heard that. It reminded me of Jordan and Joe Montana and, all the great athletes that we've seen perform on the biggest stages. So much respect to Lionel Messi. and Argentina moving on to the next round. Our last piece of news, Major League Baseball, as they get ready for their Midsummer Classic, it's being reported that 7 of the 76 Major League umpires have accepted buyout offers and will retire at the end of the season. Now, contrary to popular opinion, they're not being forced out because I'm sure, as you fellas know, there have been a ton of overturned calls under the newly implemented ABS challenge system. In fact, there have been over 3,000 successfully overturned calls. So their decisions were based on physical and personal reasons. They were not forced out of the game, according to them. All right. Now on to our guest for tonight. Ashley. Hello. Can you hear us okay?
I can hear you guys fine. What about, can you hear me?
No, your volume is extremely low.
Okay, let's see what I can do about that. I am sorry.
That's okay. We've been having technical difficulties all night, so it'd be par for the course.
If
There
it's
you go.
still, is that better?
Yep, much better.
Okay, I was gonna say
How
I
are
can try to
you?
grab some headphones. I'm divine. How are you?
Good, good, good. Say what's up, fellas.
Hey,
Hi,
how you doing
Ashley.
there, Ashley?
Hello.
So good to
All
see
right,
her bright
so
face.
say that again,
Great.
G.
So good to see her bright face.
Yep,
Oh,
that's right.
thank you. It's great.
So
It's
as we
great to
mentioned,
see all of y'all.
good to see you as well. So as we mentioned earlier, we do have a special guest with us tonight on our season premiere. We'd like to introduce Ashley Smith, who's a people first leader and nationally trusted NIL strategist who's dedicated to educating, empowering, and preparing student athletes and their village of supporters, which I love that term that she coined, their village of supporters, to thrive in the rapidly evolving name, image, and likeness, otherwise known as NIL landscape. As the founder of AGSports, Ashley equips student athletes and their village of supporters with the knowledge, tools, and confidence to understand their rights, build their brands, and secure sustainable opportunities, transforming NIL from a confusing concept into a clear pathway for long-term success. Ashley is a graduate of Howard University School of Law and DePaul University. Ashley began her legal career at Kirkland and Ellis LLP before holding senior leadership roles, at Facebook Meta and Line. She's also a senior leader at Amtrak, resides in Washington, D.C. She's a Commanders fan, folks, but don't hold it against her. She resides in D.C. with her husband, Gary, and their dog, SZA. I love that dog name, Ashley. That's what's up.
Thanks.
Welcome again, Ashley Smith. It's great to see you, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
All right, so we're going to jump right in. We're not going to waste any time.
I love it.
Our first question for you, for those listeners who may be new to the topic, what exactly is NIL, and how did you become involved in this space?
Right, so NIL stands for name, image, and likeness. And in short, it is the concept or the idea that college and also high school athletes can be compensated for the use of their name, image, and likeness. So that means pictures, photographs, social media posts, appearances, etc. And it came out of a Supreme Court case that was decided about 5 years ago that allowed for this to be possible, and that's ever evolving. I'm going to stop there just in terms of the basics of what it is. And I think for folks who are maybe a little confused still, think about how you hear about all these college players making a whole lot of money. That's NIL. That's allowed them to make a whole lot of money. Or all the issues that you hear around the transfers and the portals and all of that. It's really shaken up because of NIL. So it's really completely kind of upsided or upended the whole college sports arena.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you for sharing that with our audience.
All right, I was actually having a conversation today with a softball parent, high school softball parent. And so actually, I get a question that she asked me.
Oh,
So, what
okay.
are some of the biggest misconceptions that athletes and their villages, so parents, guardians, etc., or the public have about NIL, or even coaches for that matter?
Yeah. There's a plethora of them, and I will say I think there's so many misconceptions because the space is so ever changing and ever evolving, and there's not a lot of clarity. But it will kind of pick a few of the tops. I think one of them I would say is that you have to do NIL. I tell people it's still a choice. There is no requirement that because you are playing sports at the college level that you have to participate in NIL. You can decide it's just simply not something that you want to do. Maybe it's not the popular thing, but it is a choice. And that goes with the concept that it's free money, right? It's not. You are still engaged in a job. So, in addition to still going to school, to actually showing up for your sport, playing, all those commitments, you are still taking on other commitments when you are engaging or taking on NIL deals. And that's something that you have to remember. And along with it not being free money, it also there's tax implications that go along with this. I think we are maybe just getting into maybe not just, but I think still earlier on in folks realizing the implications of taxes here, especially as these amounts get larger and larger. And I always say it's twofold, right? It's not just the money that these athletes are getting paid, that they need to make sure they're reserving some money for taxes because nothing's being taken out for them.
Mm-hmm.
It's also parents who might otherwise still be claiming their kids on their taxes. I know when I was in college, my parents still claim me. Yeah, I had a job at the DePaul gym, but that wasn't making me enough money that my parents, couldn't claim me. So they were claiming me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure a lot of parents think you can continue to do that because your kid's in school and you're not thinking twice about it. The reality is these kids are making so much money. We're in a different ball game, right? And so I think there's implications on both sides. So I think that's a misconception. Another misconception is this idea of I have an agent, so everything is okay. I don't have to worry about it. It doesn't matter, or the school's taking care of it. Similarly, someone at the school is looking out for them. That is not the case. There are some great people in the world. That is not often. I feel like a lot of my clients, that's not what I'm running into. It's instead, oh, I didn't realize that they were taking this money. Oh, I didn't realize that this is what I was agreeing to. Oh, I didn't realize that agent actually is really putting themselves first, not always me first. I think those are just, I will say, some of the high level misconceptions. And really kind of what I think the misconceptions overall are really what drive my passion for this work, quite frankly. And I think I might have missed a question around kind of how did I even get into this, and I'm happy to go back to that. But I think overall, it is the misconceptions and the lack of knowledge out there that make me really passionate about doing this work and educating and empowering those villages about NIL so they can really best take advantage of this landscape that I like to say was allegedly put together to benefit them, but I don't think fully benefits student athletes unless you know how to work the system.
Can I do a quick follow up?
Of course.
So how do you approach the topic of the time that they will need on their academics versus their NIL obligations and their athletics obligations? How do you approach that conversation?
Yeah. For me, it comes up two ways. So I find I'll choose say two main ways. One of them is I do something with athletes in their villages that I call NIL 101. So whether it's 101, one on one, or whether it's in group settings, I can go through some base level education. And when I'm doing that base level education, I make sure that I mention this concept of, when I talk about it's not required. NIL is not something you have to do. And let's remember it's a job. And so I kind of inform them that way of a reminder of this is something that you're adding on to an already full plate, right? Like being a college athlete is not an easy endeavor to begin with. And so just know what you're signing up for. And also, when I'm doing those educational sessions with them, I also talk about just understanding contracts. And so we talk about what is the requirements in the contract, what do you have to do to get paid this money, and make sure that they're okay with that. And I really talk to the athletes and say, okay, if you are required to do this many appearances or this many posts or this whatever, are you okay with that? Let's avoid the vague language that says, because it's not uncommon to say, we'll have you do social media posts. Well, how many posts am I doing? We'll have you make appearances. Well, when am I doing those appearances? Where are those appearances? How far do I have to travel? Because to your point, like I'm still have to go to school. I have to show up for practice. I got to show up for games. I have other commitments. Can I make sure I can, meet those obligations? So I bring it up in those educational sessions. And then also when I'm working with clients on the actual agreements and just talking through them and making sure they understand what are in these agreements that they're signing, when that language comes up about what their obligations or their requirements are, I'm really big on making sure the athlete themselves knows exactly what they're saying they need to be doing. And to me, that is kind of the way of saying, okay, are you sure you can do that? Are you sure you're okay with that? And it could be, we had one of my families were finishing up one of their contracts, and the mom was telling me that the school is committed to having an academic or like an academic advisor or coach to help out, particularly when he is traveling for games. And so we said, okay, well, let's like make sure that is that reference. Can we get that in writing? Let's make sure that's clarified. We know that education is important. So we're just talking through that and making sure that they're upholding their end of the bargain so that he is meeting his academic obligations in addition to athletic and NIL obligations.
Right. Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep. So, Ashley, it just sounds like that you take on these folks in your role as an advocate, to make certain that a lot of these student athletes don't make mistakes, that are educated and they don't make the mistakes they have that they'll pay for maybe in court one day. Could you talk about what are the most common and basic mistakes that you've seen or maybe heard from people that might not have been your clients, or your clients have come to you after they have made mistakes? Could you talk about the common mistakes that folks are making with negotiating their NIL deals?
Yeah. I'm going to rechange. They're not even negotiating the deals. That's probably the biggest mistake, right? Is there's the excitement, right? Someone is offering me, name the price, 5,000, 10,000, 50,000, 100,000, a million, 5 million, right? And like we've all been in college. These were not numbers that we were seeing when we were in college, right? And you played sports, this is not what you were getting. So they get so excited, they just sign and they don't realize. This happens a lot, I say, on those DMs, because someone slides into your DMs and gives you an offer. And I tell people, you don't realize that that's a contract. A contract doesn't always have to be in writing. A contract just requires that someone makes you an offer for something. There is consideration or payment that is given in exchange for the work that you're doing, and that you say yes. So if I slide in someone's DMs and say, if you make this post for me, I will send you, it could be a story on Instagram. I'll send you this paraphernalia. You say yes, that's a contract. So they don't even realize what they're saying yes to.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Just
that's all it
that quick.
takes. That all verbal contracts are a thing. Everything doesn't have to be in writing, right? So people don't even realize what they're agreeing to. So it's that simple. But then you have the bigger ones, right? Where you're talking about 5, 10, 15 page contracts or agreements, but nobody's reading them. They just sign it. They have no idea. So I would definitely say that's the biggest thing that I see. It is whether it is with my clients that have come to me after the fact, whether it is what you see in like headlines or media around certain players getting into certain arrangements. It's with the schools too, right? It's I'm stuck at this school for a reason, or the agents who are taking obscene amounts of money from athletes. If you can think about the professional landscape, or where we have agents are limited on the amount of or the percentage that they can take from their clients, that's not happening in college, and it is extremely problematic. And I probably I didn't say this yet, but if you can't tell, I am an athlete person. I represent and work with athletes in their villages. I am not anti anybody else on the other side. I'm just pro the athlete in their village. And I feel like there's not enough people sticking up for them and trying to make sure they know all the things. Schools, agents, companies, they have lots of resources and lots of money. I'm trying to help the other side. And so I call that out because that is I think another flag I see, right, is that there is not the right support system around athletes, particularly because they're getting more and more money. I think when NIL started out, you would hear about deals. I think it was the big deal when I think it was the gymnast from LSU who reached $1 million, right? She
Right.
was the first one. That was a huge deal. Now, like, you can count for a day how many of these athletes are getting $1 million. I mean, not that extreme, but you get the point, right? The number has grown so dramatically.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of money still, right? And I would argue that even at lower amounts where you have more athletes who are in the six-figure range period, need to have some kind of support system in place. And I think that's something that's just not happening. It's a mistake. There's no education around a contract. What am I looking for? Anything around, I talk about the money, an accountant and taxes and reserving some money to the side. The idea of you're talking about, maybe it's not completely life changing money, but you can do some things with the money that these athletes are getting that set them up to have more options for their future than
Mm-hmm.
they might realize and still live a great life, right? I have clients who are still buying the flashy jewelry, but they're also putting money away too, right? Because they're making the right decisions. And so I think it's also folks not taking the moment to have the right team around them and to realize when set up properly, a team doesn't mean everyone's taking percentages. I love a flat fee. That is a very definitive amount that you can control. You get your education and you keep it moving, and maybe you touch base with those folks when needed, but you at least make sure you have the right tools and resources in place. And if you think about professional athletes, they have teams. And now these college athletes are making maybe not quite professional money, but they're making a lot of money, right? Professionals who, I'm a lawyer, think about professional lawyers, doctors, professors, whatever, they have accountants, they have, wealth advisors, they might have, so like, why would these athletes who are making 6-7 figures not have the same thing? So I think that's another big misconception. And I think it just goes back to there's excitement about all this money that's being thrown in their face, and not kind of taking the step or the moment to think through, okay, how do I best manage this? How do I also, go back to, you said negotiate to get more. One of my first rules is always ask for more. Like, just always ask for more. How do I do that? How do I preserve some of this money? So I think those are, I probably said way too much, but those are kind of the things I look
No,
at
you're
as some of
fine.
the big
Keep
mistakes
going.
that I wish more people
Yeah.
more people focused on and paid attention to. When I first started this work, ILB candidate was an uphill battle, and it was the idea of getting people to care about learning. And I thought this should not be that hard, but it's the excitement of the money that's being thrown at you, and so
Mhm.
that is more appealing. And it's sad to say that some of these horror stories have actually helped me in the work that I do, because people realize the pitfalls a bit more and they understand those because you've heard, whether it wasn't necessarily them specifically or clients that I have, it's also they've heard stories in the media, or their child has someone who's at the school before and they heard about X, Y, and Z happening when they went to college, and it's kind of driven people to say, oh, maybe I should pay a bit more attention.
So I have a follow up myself.
Yeah.
So some of these mistakes that the student athletes make, does it appear that it comes from from different people who claim to be, I say claim to be, on their team? You were saying that it's important that they all have a team, whether you are a first year person or whether you're going in the transfer portal. Where does some of the influence come in with some of these typical mistakes that are made, or is it that they're trying to be independent and make their own decision?
I don't, I think it can be both, actually. I mean, I think that you can still be independent in a way and make your own decisions. Listen, I love the independence. I have a client I'm working with right now, and I love him because he is so independent and he's really trying to learn and figure it out. And I know that when we have conversations, I feel like he's just sitting there taking notes on the other side because he's trying to like retain the information I'm telling him and apply it himself. And I love that. he's still acting, I would say, somewhat independently. He just consults me to help him with making those decisions and to help him learn a little bit more so he's making more informed decisions. And I think that's a bit of the difference. So I think you can do it in an independent way, or you can have a team of folks that can assist you. I think you have to realize that when you are engaging people, that they're not always putting your interest first. I actually just made, I think, a LinkedIn, Instagram post where I said, I'm not going to get this exactly right, the language, but essentially, your agent's lawyer or your agent is working for another company. They are not working for you. They are working for you, but they're not employed directly by you, right? And so, particularly if you have agents who are attached to agencies, they may not always have your best interest at heart. And so you need to always keep that part in mind, right? Case in point are these agent agreements that are taking 10 and 15% of the money that athletes are receiving, including revenue sharing money, which in a lot of these cases is a essentially predetermined amount that schools have decided this player is going to get X amount. This Y player is getting like Y amount, right? So they've already determined that amount. So if I'm coming in and I was already going to get 350, and this is $350,000 because of the position I play and the school that I'm attending, regardless of whether or not I had a lawyer or an agent, I should say, why am I paying the agent money? Why do they get 10% or 15% of that $350,000? Now, look, if you created a delta and you took my 350 and made it 4 or 5, great. You can now get you should get something off of that excess money that you created for me. But why are you getting a percentage of what you didn't do anything for? My work, my notoriety, my efforts, that's what got me that 350. And I think that's a prime example, I would say, of how are they putting your best interest first? And I don't know, and that's why I would say, in terms of not always, not that they can be influential in a bad way. I think you just have to understand where people are coming from, and it's also why sometimes I say a flat fee is great, right? Because if you have someone just coming with a flat fee, they're not concerned as much about the amount that you're getting, because they're getting paid their fee regardless, right? Like you're getting, if you're paying someone 5,000, 10,000, even whatever, they're getting 5 or 10 regardless of whether you made 350, 450, 750,000, right? So I think it makes their interest a bit different. So I mean, it's controversial. I know it's not. I joked that I felt like the LinkedIn algorithm didn't like what I had to say when I said that, because it seems like I reached a lot less people. But I like to be a little controversial at times.
Have you seen any differences in the incoming freshman versus the transfer student navigating the NIL? I'm wondering if you're seeing any advanced learning as a result of maybe their initial experience. You're seeing repeat mistakes. Is it varying? What have you seen any differences between the two student athlete segments?
I would overall say I think transfer students are probably more akin to just those who are going or who are matriculating in general, right? I think that you learn more as you go along, whether it's incoming as a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. You get a bit wiser. Are some of the same mistakes being made? Absolutely, yes. But I would say it's because they don't know that they're making mistakes, right? So if you think it is completely normal to just sign a contract or without reading it, without understanding it, or trusting someone else who tells you to go ahead and sign it, whoever that might be, you don't think that's a mistake, so you're just going to continue doing it. And look, like, it's not going to be a disaster for everybody. It's not going to be bad for everybody, right? I mean, maybe you're going to take home less money than you might have otherwise, but it's not always bad, right? It might work out for some folks, right? But I think I would say that's a mistake, or I think that's a practice that you continuously see. I do see some more education that comes up, and it's just more knowledge from experience as you get folks further along. And in part, what happens a lot too is the athletes are talking to each other. So one, you're on the same team. I was talking to someone 2 weeks ago, and she was so disappointed, female basketball player, because she is the star of the team. She is doing great. And she found out that she has teammates. She's like, how are they making more NIL money than I am? How is the school? And it's really the revenue sharing, so I should differentiate because those are separate. The revenue sharing money, and I said, well, what did she negotiate? What did she ask for? What is she, it's also what is her social media presence? What is she doing to put herself out there? How is she engaging? Right. So I think it's those conversations that they were having that I think leads them to also become a bit more educated, because they realize, oh wait, like my teammate is not getting paid the same, or they have some other benefit, or something else is going on for them that I didn't realize. And it is also sometimes the stories that they're hearing that do kind of change their outlook and perspective. I think it's what happens to all of us, right? We get older, we get wiser. Maybe not all of us, but if we're lucky, we get older, we get wiser. And I think it's very similar in this space.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
So you talked about the villages, and I guess a real straightforward question:
Yeah.
what role do you think the village should actually play in this entire process, particularly when making decisions, or what are kind of the questions that come up that really should be directed toward the village?
Yeah. You know, I have a family I work with, or village I work with, and I love them. I tell them all the time I love them. They actually have 2 athletes in that village. And I'll get on a call, and it's not just me, it is everybody. It is, and I shouldn't say the athletes, it's the parents, it's the cousins, it's the siblings, it's everybody. But I love it, right? Because what happens is that you have different people like asking questions, different people also remembering the history of what was said by various people at the school, what they discussed, what considerations need to be taken into place. That thing that the athletes said, at dinner randomly, that they want to make sure, hey, do we keep that in mind too? Are we making sure we're asking the school about this, right? There is so much going on for athletes that it is so helpful when you have like members of your village who can stop and kind of slow you down and make sure that you're asking the right questions, that you're not so like excited about the bright lights of the money and coming into college athletics, which is a big deal, particularly for some of these bigger players. And it's a dream, right? Like they've worked really hard to get here and they're really excited. And also, let's not forget, they're young, right? You have kids who are committing at 16, 17 years old. What did at 16 or 17 years old? I mean, part of the reason I love this work and was so passionate about it is that I felt like I have made a living as a lawyer being employed by very large corporations that pay lawyers lots of money to help them understand the laws and comply and navigate spaces. And somehow we thought that high school and college athletes were supposed to do this on their own. That doesn't even logically make sense to me. And so I say that the village is important because it's just another resource that you have as an athlete to help make sure that you are paying attention, that you're asking the right questions, that you have that backup. I was talking to a mom today, and she literally said, I just want to make sure I know August is going to hit, basketball player's son. August is going to hit, and it's going to be off and running between school and basketball. And I just want to make sure we get this narrowed away, squared away. Everything is going on these contracts. And I said, I know, I got you. We're gonna make it happen, right? Because she knows she's going to get boggled down with all the things that are going on, but she's a mom and she knows what's going on, and she's just trying to take care of this. She's like, I can just clear it off his plate. And I said, okay, we got it. Don't worry, we'll take care of it. And I think that's what a village can do, right? That, listen, I know that there are situations where maybe your village is not always 100% have your best interest, but I think there's a much better chance that they do than people that you're engaging who are outside and who are professionals. So I think that's the role the village can play. And I love it. And if you have people who don't want to involve your village that you're trying to bring on your team, don't bring them on your team. I have no problem.
Now, coach is a part of that
Yeah.
village.
Yes, they can be, for sure. I think, why can't they be? I think a coach can be a great resource as well. I think they have insights and visibility. I don't think it's forced, but for everyone it's different. You're right, because for some folks, and I've run across some people where maybe they didn't have parents who were as active in their lives, and their coach is the one who's really integral. Why can't their
Mm,
coach be part of that village and be someone who helps and supports? I think that's why I say village. I use the word village because it doesn't have to be someone who's related to you, to be someone who cares about you and who wants to support you and who wants to back you up and who's a part of your core team that you're not hiring, but that people
hmm
who are just there. And so I don't want to limit it to just those who are your family. And that's why I'm very intentional about that word choice.
That makes sense.
Before your next question, big dude, you piqued my curiosity now. What
Yeah.
has been the youngest athlete that you've engaged in this conversation with?
Not that young, probably 15.
Okay, still, that's a heck of
Yeah.
a
I think
conversation to
so.
have. I'm thinking when I was 15 years old, no way do I have the aptitude to handle that properly.
No.
Well, I will be fair and say the 15-year-old client, I'm mostly working with his parents, his dad. So
That's what I figured.
it is not as much like until they kind of are going in finish in senior year is when I'll have more discussions, and even that is harder. And it's why I'm also very intentional with how I work with folks, right? My NIL 101 sessions, or my just even any educational sessions, I keep them to an hour. And I don't even spend the whole hour just throwing things at them. I try to leave time for questions so it can just be dialogue, because part of my background in training and developing training is that people can take in but so much information, right? And I don't
Right.
want to throw so much at you that you can't actually take anything away. My goal is that you leave time with me being better off and having things that you've learned and that you can remember and that you can apply later on, not just to say, oh, I checked the box and did, this NIL session, I learned some stuff. No, I'm better because I did it. And similarly, if we're talking about terms or deals or agreements or anything like that, I try to take it really slow, and will try to involve athletes as much as I possibly can. And I recognize that we're talking about high schoolers. I'm like, what's going to be enticing for them, right? Like, which sections can I get them excited about? Are they really going to care about? So I try to just be really intentional, because, listen, I many lawyers will tell you we don't love like reviewing contracts, for instance, and reviewing agreements. So if like we don't think it's the most exciting, enticing thing, what am I going to expect
Hmm.
non-lawyer, 17-year-old to think?
Absolutely. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds like, Ashley, that you dealt with almost, I guess, at every pass at every institution that these individuals could go to. You're dealing with a lot of possible stakeholders and folks that are not just going to be involved with their decisions, but going to be involved with what happens on campus, and of course, helping the student athlete to manage their affairs. Otherwise, what are some red flags that you may be concerned about if somebody maybe chooses an institution or wants to put a contract together? People who are, again, coming out of high school or transferring, what are some of the red flags that you might see?
Yeah.
And
So I
also
think for
think about contract lengths, because that was I wanted to ask you about that early on, but actually it fits really well here. Whether or not the length of a contract comes into play, and if that, or can that be a red flag too? So thank you.
I think you just said my first red flag, which is one of them, which is contracts into perpetuity. So you might
Hmm.
have heard about this coming out in the media, these contracts into perpetuity. And it's not necessarily, so I think there's multiple facets. You have perpetuity language that might exist that allows universities to continue to use your name, image, or likeness into perpetuity. And that's like if you took a picture of an athlete, so let's I love how no one ever comes to mind. When I need to. Darren Peterson, right? Kansas might want to use his pictures forever, right? Particularly because he's a top draft pick. There's high expectations. They want to show that he went there. It's in that agreement that they can use those pictures or those videos that they took of him forever. Similarly, right, NCAA can do the same thing of using video. That's one thing. That perpetuity, like they're we're not there where they're going to give that up. That is different though than when you're speaking about You entered into an NIL agreement with the company, and the company wants to use your name, image, and likeness into perpetuity. Or when you're with an agent and they are going to get paid into perpetuity for deals that they help you to acquire. So I'm going to give you an example of, especially on the agent side, because that's the one I think the perpetuity language is the scariest. Let's say you enter a deal with Gatorade, and it's a deal with Gatorade that is for this coming school year. So it goes from July 1, 2026 to June 30th, 2027. You also at the same time have a deal with your agent who helped you with negotiating, procuring this deal. But that deal with your agent says that any deals that I help you get, I get 10% of the value for in perpetuity, essentially. Any relationship with that client into perpetuity. Well, you stop working with your agent in June of 2027, but you keep working with Gatorade and the following year. So 2027, you enter into a new agreement with Gatorade, but with a new agent, or even just you decide I'm going to go solo. I don't need an agent. Because of that agent agreement, that agent continues to get the money off of your Gatorade deal for as long as you're with Gatorade.
That's crazy.
And so what if you go with Gatorade through college into the pros? They're continuing to get a percentage off of that deal. That's the in perpetuity. And don't have a couple of agents, right? Because you might have 2 agents or 3 agents who are now collecting money off of your deal with that company.
That
So
was going to be the
that's
next question I asked you. What if they they renegotiate or change that deal?
yep. So that's an in
Wow.
perpetuity that is very concerning, right? Similarly, a company, you think about is it residuals? I think is the right word. You think about folks who are acting on TV shows, and they play reruns of shows, and they end up getting maybe not residuals is the right word, but an actor can continue to get residuals because they keep playing that show over and over and again. Well, why aren't some athletes getting the same thing in their deals? If I at X company can continue to use that advertisement for years to come, shouldn't I get compensated for the fact that you can use it for years to come?
Mm-hmm.
Now, sometimes the
Wow.
compensation is fine and it's worth it, but you want to know what that looks like, right? When you are signing a deal and agreeing to an amount of money. So I think the perpetuity language is a big red flag. Another big red flag is really what am I being required to do and what am I being paid for that, right? $50,000 can sound real fabulous, but it doesn't sound so fabulous when you have to do 25 posts, make 20 appearances, do 500 autographs. Maybe that's not as attractive anymore because you realize, oh my God, this is so much time I'm spending for this $50,000, right? So that ability to connect the what am I doing with how much I'm getting paid, really critical, which is why when you have vague terms, and by vague terms are vague terms of obligations, what is it that I have to do? So I need you to be specific. Don't just say you need to make some appearances, you need to make some posts, you need to do, well, what specifically am I being asked to do? I will say in agreements with schools, I see more often that they are not as specific around the number of posts or even some things around the appearances. And I think it's a little bit harder for schools. It is not as concerning to me right now. I haven't seen with my clients that that's backfired as much. And I would say it's twofold. One, because the schools, they care about you showing up to be committed to athletics as well. That's clearly a very big priority to them. They don't want to take away from your ability to show up for practices and team events and to show up for classes. Like that matters. The second thing is that their obligations tend to just be smaller, right? So they're not asking for the same types of things. I think companies can be different. And so they will ask for more and they will push more and not maybe respect the obligations that you have to your university. And the thing I do, for instance, in agreements is say, okay, let's at least, if we can't get specific on the number of, because it's unclear and it maybe depends on how the season's going, we do have language that says the priority of those schools and athletics. This is not the priority. And so nothing you ask me to do can get in the way of that. So I think there's ways around it. Let me see. I know there's other red flags. I talked about the DMs. Nothing that requires instant signing or instant agreement. Why can't I review it? If you won't give me time to review something and look something over, not okay. And I will tell this one last story because I feel like I'm getting long-winded.
Well, you're doing good.
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
working with a family, and we were working actually on acquiring an agent. So this is one of those like really well informed parents who is just like, it's time to get an agent. I think I probably need a little bit of help with even getting an agent because I'm seeing these agreements they give me.
Mm-hmm.
So this must have been, and by the way, we went through a few agents until we landed on one that we felt good about. But it was maybe the first or second agent. We had the agreement. We talked through it together. The dad and I raised a bunch of flags. They were meeting. They were having a meeting with the agent. He and his wife, and their son. And he told me later on during the course of the conversation with the agent got progressively madder and madder during the conversation about the things that were being brought up about the proposed agreement. And the agent, who happens to also have a very, very high profile client, also said, well, nameless, I'm not going to say the name, X didn't complain about these things and they were okay with signing with it, as if like if he accepted, I don't know why you're complaining.
Yeah.
And I just thought, the dad was really happy actually, because the dad felt like his son got to see how this agent was
Yep.
reacting. By the way, this agent is an agent with a major agency that you would, very well known major agency. And I just thought, like, that's it's a great red flag. Like, they absolutely said no, they were not going with that person. But if you are pushing back on what is reasonable, and by the way, some of these things we're pushing back on are the percentages that are obscene that you're taking, and we're trying to ask you to bring something reasonable. So I would definitely say that is a red flag. If people get mad because you're asking for things that are reasonable, we have a problem. Like, that's not meant for you. And you know what, I will say this at the end of the day. What I think is a red flag and what I would advise you on may be something that you as an athlete or as part of a village say, we're okay with that. One of the things that I often say is, this is my advice. These are my thoughts. Let me make sure you understand it. These are our options. The decision is ultimately yours, though. And I can't tell you what you are okay with, because you might be someone who your priority is getting a deal, and you might be willing to take less than ideal terms to get to that deal. And I can't tell you no. That's not my job. My job is just to help make you as informed and educated as possible. Which made me think of, sorry, one last red flag that I really want to say, because I'm seeing it more, and I feel like as we're getting into fall, I want folks to know this one, which is, try to do as much of your negotiation before you commit. I've been running into situations recently where you have athletes who are committing to a school, and clearly committing and signing different, right? But like, once you've signed in particular, who have already signed, and then they're trying to negotiate, which now we have 3 agreements. Scholarship is not one we have to worry about as much, but we have the NIL agreement, but you also have the revenue sharing agreement, because those are different things. And they're trying to negotiate the terms of those agreements, but in the school's eye, they're like, well, I already got you. You've already signed. So your leverage is lost in some way. Not always, but particularly for those who are coming in as freshmen, you lose some leverage and things get a little bit harder. So I would say, try to get that done before you've actually signed, so that you have is the best terms you possibly can. And similarly, if you're transferring, it's a little bit easier because the timing is short, and so you can, like, I was doing some Russian a couple of months ago. I guess we're in July now. Yeah, that we were chiming through real quick while the portal was open to get some agreements done. But again, it was because they hadn't fully signed, right? And so we could leverage that lack of a signature to get some terms that we wanted that were more favorable.
Okay.
Can you just review for our audience again? I know you mentioned the revenue agreement, which we were not familiar with prior to meeting with you initially. These 3 agreements that the student athlete is dealing with for our audience, and kind of define
Yes.
each of them, because a lot of
Yes.
people, I don't think, knew about that revenue agreement being this separate entity.
Yes. Okay. And I'm gonna give you the 3 different concepts, areas, agreements, and then I'm gonna tell you how sometimes you don't see them as 3 different agreements. So I know, confusing, but this is all a reflection of this very fast-paced, moving space that just changes too quickly, and people can't keep up. So we really have 3 different. I would say you can see up to 3 different agreements. You have your scholarship, right? That's been around for a long time. Athletes have been getting scholarships. We know about that. With the invention of NIL, we have the NIL agreement. The NIL agreements are what you would see more with it was the boosters or the collectives, and so those were the folks that were helping athletes to get these NIL deals, or maybe the booster would or the collective would give the not and by give compensate the athlete a certain amount of money in exchange for whether it was they were kind of getting the deals for them for the athletes. In some places, in some schools, the athletes were performing community service on behalf of the school in exchange for like their NIL payments. So schools did it differently. So it wasn't necessarily through the school directly, but the school kind of helped facilitate that. And what I've seen recently too is some schools have facilitation services agreements where it's them facilitating the getting of deals for their athletes. So very still in the NIL space. Then you have the newbie, which we're not even a year in yet. We're almost in a year, which is revenue sharing, which is why you totally makes sense why you're not as familiar, because it happened last summer. It was part of the big house settlement that allowed for revenue sharing. And that's when you hear about that $20+ million that schools are allowed to share with their student athletes. And it is literally what it says, revenue sharing. The schools are allowed to share in their revenue from athletics with the students. And this is that amount when I mentioned there's like a predetermined amount that schools will say, okay, wide receivers in this conference or at this school in this are getting X, right? They've in a lot of cases I've seen they're predetermining those amounts. That is a separate agreement because the revenue sharing is not about in specific individual deals that you're doing. It is really just a sharing of the revenue. And so those obligations tend to be more show up for practice, be on time, like play in all your games. It's associated, it's not pay for play, but it is the idea that you are fulfilling your obligations as an athlete. Because it's not that you have to play at a certain level. It's just like it. I think it's kind of lends itself candidly this idea of are they employees? Because it's partially like if you're
You said
right,
it. You said it, not
I
us.
know. Let's
No,
let
that's pay
Patty
for play.
get
I'm
into
sorry.
that one.
That's a whole other show.
That's pay
It's a
for
whole
Yeah,
play.
it
other
is.
it's a whole other area.
Yeah, it is.
But they are separate. And I will say this though too, not everyone has 3 separate agreements because revenue sharing is still new. You will see some schools that just have one and it covers kind of the NIL revenue sharing, the duo of them. What is hard about this landscape and the movement of it going so fast is that I can't tell you this is the structure that you're going to see at every school. When I'm working with schools on negotiating or discussing discussing the matters related to my clients, I've talked to CFOs and I've talked to GMs. I've talked to lawyers. It varies. It varies on the size of the school. It varies on really the resources that the school has put into NIL, into athletics, etc. And so it's just not a one size fits all approach. So I would say if you are a part of a village or you're a student athlete and you're like, well, I don't have 3 agreements, don't assume that means something is wrong, right? It's a lot going on and the school could just be catching up. They also title them differently, right? That can be confusing sometimes. So just some things to kind of keep in mind. Yeah, I will pause there.
Wow. A little bit blown away
But
by that
they're not
piece.
required to have 20 million. They can just have it. If they decide to do revenue sharing, the cap is 20 million an institution. Is that how it is?
Yes, the cap
Okay.
is that 20 plus or 22 and a half, 22. That's the cap. So it's not a requirement. That's just the max, which does continue to increase. So
How the heck they come to that number? Do you know?
I know, and I'm going to try to remember in this moment. It'll be candid, a little bit of jet lag still going on for me. So the number is it was like a calculation based on revenue, if I can recall correctly, that schools were getting, and so they set this amount, but also trying to take into account different size of schools. So there's one, Power 5 is one thing, but then you've got other schools that aren't making nearly as much, and still trying to keep the playing field somewhat leveled, even though it's not fully leveled, but still trying to keep some leveling of the playing field with that amount. Yes.
I see. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
And that's actually potentially a second stream for an agent to tap into if they have any
Yeah.
part in that revenue.
That's the
agreement?
part I was mentioning. They will take that too. They will try to take not only
Wow.
that's what I was mentioning, that I'm up, you're getting 350, four
That's what
fifty,
I
or I think
thought.
whatever
Okay.
number. That's the revenue sharing that I'm thinking, why are you getting money from that? That's separate and apart from the NIL money, or can be. Because, and what you see often is like, so, like I have clients that they'll have X amount, right? So maybe it's like 2.1 million.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 2.1 is across two agreements. It's half, maybe not half, but it's X amount for revenue sharing, X amount for NIL deals.
Oh,
And one
okay.
other thing with the revenue sharing that might make, just to make you feel a bit more comfortable about the fact that it's definitely not pay for play. There's also those like incentives for additional, like, so if you go for basketball players, March Madness, football players get into conference games, same thing for any other athletes. And I'm
Okay.
saying, by the way, I keep saying basketball and football, but please know, like, that is definitely not all who's getting money from
Yeah.
NIL, and it
Yeah.
is only growing. So I want to be really clear about that. Because again, with the revenue sharing, the school's making more money when the teams are going into March Madness or getting on a conference game. So therefore, you're sharing more money with the athletes in turn.
Wow. Wow. All right. Well, this is a great segue into how do you see the landscape evolving since its launch, and what trends do you think will shape the future of NIL?
I would love to have a
I
crystal
like
ball
that
that can help
chuckle.
me, because it's just, like, I would love to have the ability to predict what's going to happen. I think, the thing I say is it's going to change, and that something's going to continue to evolve, and it's going to take a minute before we get to something that is more concrete. I think folks have been asking me about, and we've been talking about, the Protect College Sports Act that folks has come up on the Hill, and I say, well, it's only gotten past a committee. We still have got to get past the entire Senate. Yes, it's the furthest we've gotten on terms of just having a national bill or national legislation on NIL, but there's still some hurdles to go through,
Mm-hmm.
and I I just don't think it's going to come off that easily. I would love to be proven wrong, because I think something more concrete that's at a national level would actually be helpful. I love aspects in there that limit the amount that agents can take at 5%. I love that. I wish that can kind of go into
Yeah,
play.
that would be good.
I think it's going to continue to evolve. One thing I don't think is going to die down is this conversation around employment.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't help but say, like, at my core, I started out as like a labor employment person. I really started out doing labor law because I love sports so much that I thought, oh well, sports have collective bargaining agreements, I should like learn that, because if I want to work in sports, right, that would be really helpful. And sometimes I joke now that I think, oh, look at this craziness of full circle, like I might end up still dealing with collective bargaining
Mm-hmm.
agreements but working with college athletes, right? I and I think that if you can get athletes to be even more educated about these things, I think that actually increases the likelihood that they might try to figure out some way to create a collective and unionize, or maybe not unionize, but do something where they create their own cohort. Um, so I think that conversation is not dying. That's for sure. I think the pushback that you continue to get from big schools that have been dominant for so long, I think that conversation is still going to continue. But I really think it's going to be, I think we've got another like 3 to 5 years of, changing. Something's changing all the time, and something's ever evolving, until we get into a better spot. And I think, what's going to happen is, listen, you still have professional athletes who make mistakes, who don't make great decisions, who don't
That's
have great
true.
representation,
That's
Yeah,
true.
who, and I think it's going to be the same thing, right? So I don't, as much as I would love a landscape where we could get college athletes to like make the best decisions, have people who really believe in them and support them and put their interest at the forefront. As much as I'm a glass half full person, I don't know that that's going to be the case. So I think we're going to see some of the same things that we've seen with with professional sports, that we see at the college and even high school levels. And I think there's going to be also just an increase in high school presence of NIL, that you'll see.
Great. All right. So we have one last question.
Yes.
Now I want you to address this as if you're speaking to next year's freshman student athlete and their villages.
Okay.
they have their NILs. What are the three most important things that you would advise them to focus on as they navigate that for that first year?
Okay. So I would say first, remember why you're going to that school. You're going to that school, you selected them, they selected you for two reasons: to get an education and to play a sport. Do that well. Show up well as an athlete, because that is what gives you more options. And I cannot tell you the number of times that I have heard from universities, whether it is GM, coach, head of a collective, etc., that they like athletes. They're happy that I'm working with the athlete, because that means the athlete cares to know what they're supposed to be doing, how they're supposed to be showing up, and it works better for them. So I would say do that, because then when you go back to negotiate the next year, you have more leverage and you have more power, because you are a great athlete. You are showing up well. You're showing up probably academically well too, or at least just not academically horribly. You're making them look better, and so they want to keep you around, especially in the day of this transfer portal, right? And so
Mm,
you can negotiate an even better deal for yourself if you show up well. Um, the other thing I would say is, and I maybe should have put this first, but I think what I said first was 1B and this is 1A, which is get educated and get a support function around you. I think this becomes even more important, particularly in the support function, the kind of more elite or high profile of an athlete that you are. And that means learn some basics. You don't have to be an expert in NIL. You just have to know what I have to say is issue spot. Do I know a few things to know, like, that doesn't sound right, or that doesn't seem right,
hmm
or maybe I should ask someone a question about this thing? Just a little something. Someone you can pick up the phone and call. Just the basics of education and finding the people that can support you and having your team. And I think that I parent now we're working with, she came to me, and I hadn't done this before, candidly, and said, we're about to go to school. I want to build a team. I want you to help me build the team, because I trust you and I know that you can help me build this team. And so it's okay. We're going to find your accountant. We're finding a wealth person. We've already found an agent. So we're building that team, and then we're going to put them all on the same page together. And even if it's someone in your village who is that person who quote unquote manages that team, or you have somebody separate, but just figure out what that looks like for you and get that into place and have your education down packed. And then last but not least, I would say is making sure that you protect your eligibility, making sure that you're doing all the right things as you're in school so that you do not risk that. Right? Are
mm,
you reporting all of your NIL deals, right? And getting those approvals? Whatever you need to do, don't mess up the good thing that you got going on. That's the
Mm.
other thing that I would say to make sure to do. And you're gonna kill me. I'm gonna cheat and add a fourth, which is just also have fun. It's stressful, it's a lot, but
that's
still
right.
enjoy it. Like, you are still in college and an experience that you will never have again in your life. And
Truth.
God willing, your life will be long, and college is a blip. And especially if you're an athlete who can go pro, it is a shorter blip if you're going to go into college at all. And so just enjoy that time, because it's magical, it's amazing. And candidly, those of us who didn't get to make money like y'all are making money, it can be even better with what y'all have to do
That's
with
right.
it. So really
That's right.
make it great and make it count.
That's right. Gee, big dude. Anything else for Ashley as we get ready to wrap up?
No, just I guess in all this, to Ashley, I appreciate it, because we have to know where to add this other part of education. It's kind of like, where do you splice it in? Like there's a DJ. We got the old turntables. Where do you splice the beat in? It just seems like that just keeps on changing.
I know.
And
Um,
I'm
I would
sitting here
say,
listening. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ashley.
oh no, I'm sorry. I didn't know if you wanted me to respond. I
yeah,
was gonna.
sure.
Okay, I get it, right? I think that's what's hard. I think that some of the foundational stuff is foundational stuff that doesn't really change, right? When I talk
Hmm.
about understanding to like read a contract, whatever's happening today doesn't stop your ability. That doesn't change knowing what are vague terms, or knowing what there's something into perpetuity, or just some of those basics. Like that part doesn't really change. And so I think those are some basics it's also, like, look, the algorithms online work, right? So if you just do a couple of things that pop up information about NIL, you'll candidly get information that just like pops up. Follow certain
Mm-hmm.
people, right? Like, I candidly need to work on my own social media game because I want to be one of those people, and I see them that they just have information that pops up that you can just scroll through and find some new learnings, but you don't have to be an expert in it. I think that's why they also finding folks who can help you out is really important, that you can use as a resource and you can just go back to kind of every so often. You're right. It's not easy. I think the system was not set up for success for athletes.
Nope. Nope.
And I think this is a prime example. If the system was set up for success for athletes, it would be easier for them to stay educated and stay on top of things. And it's not.
Hmm.
So
And
Yeah.
that's why I have issues with the College Protect Act, because I'm not so sure it's designed what it's supposed to do to protect. I have a hard
Of
time
course
believing
not. Yeah, definitely not.
that.
Gee, you had something?
Well, I was just listening, and I'm thinking back about different artists, from the early decades of the 20th century. Think about a lot of rappers, particularly early on in the genre, and just how
Mm,
they were treated, and quickly jumping into these contracts and not having that village around them. And I mean, the capitalists who are running those companies, they're in it to make money, and they're going to do what you allow them to do. So that's what I was thinking about. And then the second part was, I'm glad that you're doing what you're doing, because at least the ones that work with you, they're not going to have those horror stories, is how I'm feeling.
yeah, that's a
thank you
great
for saying that.
comparison, actually. That's a great
Excellent,
comparison to the music
excellent,
industry, which is
excellent, G.
scary.
Yeah.
But
It's
But
scary.
look, that wraps up our season premiere episode for season 2. Ashley, thank you so much for joining us. This information, I think, has been so educational, not only for our audience, but for us. And we would love to have you back for something in the future, if you're so willing. But thank you so much on behalf of the entire crew for joining us tonight. Um, Fellas, I think this is a
And
great way
one
to
thing,
start off the. Go ahead.
I was going to just ask Ashley if she can remind our listeners and viewers where she can be reached.
Oh yeah, promote yourself. Yes, promote
Oh, well,
your
Yes,
please
sorry,
do.
organization
you're
and
so kind.
yourself.
Um,
Absolutely.
before I say that, I will just say thank you all so much. I really have enjoyed the conversation. I love getting to talk about this. It's a passion for me. I also love getting to talk about it with people who I can tell care, and I can tell you care. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to do that. You can find me, so AG Sports, and so it's AG Sport on Instagram. It's AG Sports underscore NIL. You can also just email me, Ashley at agsports underscore NIL.com. And it's Ashley Smith on LinkedIn, and you can follow me there. And I try to post what I call the NIL nuggets, just kind of little tidbits of information that I throw at people to learn a bit more. But any of those avenues, platforms, happy to connect with folks, and thanks again. And I love getting to work with people, so I'm always happy to do that.
And we'll also share that information when we publish this episode as well. So
Awesome.
much appreciated. Thank you once again for joining us, and continue to subscribe, like, follow Chasing Rings on all the major streaming platforms. Connect with AG Sports. Until next time, see ya later.
Bye.